John, thanks for coming on the Builder Sessions
Hey, thanks.
and on short notice. Hey, we just sent you a couple. You're like, I could do tomorrow. Fine.
16 hours.
Yeah, 16 hours notice. We appreciate you coming on.
Nothing like the present.
For our listeners who are unfamiliar with what you do and your social media presence and all that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name is John Stene. Danger is my middle name.
There
Given
it
to
is.
me by many people in the comments on
Oh,
Instagram
thanks.
over the years.
We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, but I grew up here in South Central Montana, and my dad's a cabinet maker, and his dad before him was a craftsman of type. Basically, all those immigrants from Norway and stuff had to know how to work with their hands, and they had to know how to do things on their own. And so that kind of then was niched down into cabinet making for my dad. And then that basically I got out of high school and I'm like, well, what do I know how to do? Well, I know how to build cabinets. So I grew up in, working in the shop, pushing a broom to, feeding the planer to doing all sorts of stuff. And then eventually graduated to building cabinets and that type of stuff. Um, my parents strongly encouraged me to go to Bible college up in Pembroke, Saskatchewan,
Nice.
which is a nothing town in Saskatchewan. But great people, great. It was a character crucible, I like to call it. Knocked off all my rough edges and helped me to be more focused and generous and thoughtful and understanding more. And then I met my wife while I was up there, married her, lived there for 12 years, and then moved back home, bought the home place. So I'm living in the house I grew up in. I'm working in the shop that my dad built and just going like crazy.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
Almost full circle, eh?
Where in
pretty
Saskatchewan?
much.
Heronville?
Pembroke.
Pambrin? Was way off.
Yeah, there's a lot of ugly names for towns in Saskatchewan, like Moose Jaw
Yeah.
and Pambrook. You're just like, what is going on?
Where's Pambrin near?
Swift Current.
Okay.
Swift
Yeah.
Swift Current, Saskatchewan's north of there.
I have.
Pembroke is like super duper small.
So we're in Lethbridge.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
Right
yeah.
on.
So we have I grew up in Medicine Hat,
Gotcha.
and that's
Gotcha.
cool. And so you're real. I mean, even in Montana, you're pretty close.
Yeah, not too far. Probably 10 hours, 12 hours, maybe. Not that far.
That's pretty cool.
So, yeah.
Like it. I've never heard of
Pembroke.
Pambrin.
Well, nobody has. It's the town that doubles or triples in size when the school year hits. So there's almost nobody there. And it's on this really, really, really bad Saskatchewan road. Like really bad. I think it was at
It's
the
by
43.
yeah.
It's
By
just terrible.
Peltier, right?
What's that?
Like Peltier.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been to that lake. Right on. Okay,
Yeah.
so how'd you get into this? Like, how did this? I know you said like you're right now you're in the shop that your dad
Yeah.
built and whatever, but like, give us a little more of that backstory.
Well, it's interesting. My dad was a custom cabinet built maker, and he wasn't one of those guys. Well, there's 5 of us boys, so I have 4 brothers, and so he had his hands full feeding us, and it seemed like we are always just living like right against the edge, you know. He was always working all the time and working real hard. He was building really high end stuff, so he wasn't a production builder. It was just him by himself. Sometimes he had a hired guy here or there. But for the most part, it was just him. He was building face frame cabinets. He was building all his own doors, all his own drawers. Dovetail was not poplar. Yeah, yellow poplar for a while, and then it changed to alder. But building all his own stuff, and he was just a one man show, and so that's all I knew. And then I go up to Canada after graduating from Bible college, and I moved up there because I'd been dating my now wife for a couple years, and we knew we were going to get married. And so I moved up there and found a job at a cabinet shop. Well, they built Euro style cabinets, and that's way different than face frame, like way different. And I'm like, yeah, I have all this cabinetry experience. Well, I didn't touch a single piece of solid wood. That's really where my skill set was. And I was sanding at a spray booth for like 3 months. It's like, guys, the guy who was actually doing the spray in the spray booth, he must have been, the owner must have known him or something, because they kept giving him, chance after chance after chance. He would forget to mix the catalyst in with the spray finish. He sprayed an entire, like a whole bunch of commercial millwork, and it would be tacky, days after, because he forgot to put the catalyst in. And just goofy stuff like that wouldn't show up. Oh, if he went to a concert, if he went to a concert on a Saturday, he would not be in until Tuesday afternoon.
Really?
Yeah. So I was back there, and then half the time when he wouldn't show up, I would just go in and start mixing it and spraying, because I had experience with that. But so that was my first jump into commercial cabinetry. First time doing Euro style, and I was up in Saskatoon at the time. And then after 4 months there, I was like, I've had enough. I can't be back at this spray booth anymore. And so I went down to Regina, started renting a basement suite there, and I worked for a residential guy out of the city, which was really good. That was pretty neat. It was good to see like that smaller shop mentality with the Euro style, because the other folks were cutting everything out with the CNC and putting everything together with, big case clamps and stuff. So I was out there. That was good. I learned a lot. Was building kitchens basically on my own. He'd give me the plans and we'd do that, and he would work on sales and then, come in and do some of the bigger stuff that we needed to do together. Then I moved from there to a commercial shop, and I was there in Regina for 8 years. Did everything from interior doors and making door frames to solid surface countertops to decorative wall panels to a lot of spray finishing. Did a whole bunch of stairs, just anything and everything. They would get a project. And architectural commercial millwork is actually really interesting. It's not all just, laminate and square boxes. So that was really cool. It really stretched your ability to do things, especially working with other people. That's a big one, learning to work with other people. So it was just a building, it wasn't just residential. I like residential, but commercial is awesome. I just love it. Walking into a space where somebody isn't, showering is just wonderful. I feel really awkward walking into people's houses sometimes. It's like, I don't want to step on anyone's toes.
Yeah.
But commercial spaces, you just roll in, get your work done, roll out. It's great.
So you mentioned the excuse me, face frame and Euro style, and I'm almost backwards. When I did my apprenticeship, we were all European cabinets, and when I actually moved out here to Lethbridge, there was a guy I met, and he did all face frame, and I actually worked with him a bit, and we did some projects, and that was a huge learning curve. Almost kind of similar when you went from face frame to Euro. I've got all these skills, and it's a total different build, and I can appreciate both. I don't know if I'm sold on one or the other. I guess I always do what I know now. But the face frame, when we're talking about strength and all that other stuff, I mean, this is a very complicated trade, because like carpentry, where you can do concrete, stairs, there's commercial, residential, right?
Yeah. Well, and the
Woodworking
interesting thing, the interesting thing about face frame, the reason people use face frame is because we didn't have the quality of sheet goods that we have now that are structural in and of themselves. So a lot of people would build the face frame, and then they would just box in the ends in a house. So a lot of these guys would build these kitchens in the house, not bringing cabinets from a shop to a house. They'd build them there.
Oh.
And that way they could just close in the one end, which was a finished end, and then they would leave almost everything open, like for drawers and whatever else, and they box in areas for, shelved cabinets. But with the higher quality sheet goods becoming readily available and mills being able to produce that, the Euro style started to come in. People started to go, well, why are we putting this face frame on? It's an extra step. You know, we have to cut it, we have to mill it, we have to cut it, we have to join it, we have to sand it, we have to spray it, we have to do all this stuff. Whereas with a Euro style cabinet, you don't have to. You have more space. The space is utilized way better. Honestly, like you automatically lose 3/4 of an inch on the depth with a face frame just right off the bat. And then it's not even talking about all the styles and the rails and stuff that get in the way. Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate a face frame look, but it's the practice of making a face frame is sort of impractical when you look at it. Cosmetically, cool. Practicality,
Yeah.
junk.
So going from Canada and the States, is face frame or Euro style more predominant in, like, would face frame be more predominant in the States, or is it kind of half and half? Or
It depends on where you're at, because I know in my area it was pretty much all face frame. That's what my dad did. That's what most of the other companies did. And then with the Euro style coming in, especially, and honestly, a lot of the Euro style became simpler, or were able to be used because of hardware, because of the drawer hardware and the hinges that could come out, the concealed bloom hinges that we all know and love today. That is a lot. If I want to speculate a little bit, that is what changed it, because you went from a face mount to a side mount, and the overlay was such that you could get, you know, that 5/8 overlay or 11/16 overlay. So yeah, and I guess style, honestly, all I saw in Canada, at least around Saskatchewan, was Euro. I didn't see a single face frame cap. People were ripping the face frame stuff out, and they were putting the Euro style in. It's a cleaner look. It's a smoother look. I found that there's a lot of people going for that modern look. You know, flat panel doors. You know, sometimes kind of funky designs, and I don't know. It was kind of taking the trends from other places and applying them, but still keeping kind of the traditional styles around the area. So it was like a mishmash of everything. But I don't know. I would say if I was to build a raised panel face frame kitchen here, people wouldn't think too much about it. But if I built it up in Regina or Saskatoon, it'd be like, what is this? Why is grandma ordering a kitchen at age 95?
Yeah. So, at the risk of sounding completely ignorant, for those of us who have no idea what you two are talking about right now, it's like you guys are just like, well, yeah, you're both makers, and anyone else who's familiar with this, maybe it's just me.
you're the 1%ers.
I'm the 1%. I'm the 1%. Can you explain face frame versus Euro? What is that? What's the difference? 'Cause I have no clue. You couldn't ask. I couldn't get.
So a face frame is a wooden frame that's put on the face of the cabinet. And for the longest time, that was the structure of the cabinet. Basically, it was like, you know, when you frame a house and then you put everything on after that frame, that all the framing is the structure. And with a face frame, you were able, basically, you'd build the cabinet from the front back. So you build the face frame, that was your main structure. Then you applied the sides and then the back, and then, you know, everything fit in there. So you'd have, you know, usually 1.5 rail or stiles on either side. A stile is a vertical structural piece of the face frame. The rails are the pieces that go in between. So the stiles are always vertical. The rails are horizontal and in between the stiles. That also applies with the frame, say, of a door. Your stiles are always, you know, go the full length of the door, and then the width, the rail goes in between structurally. And that's mainly for mounting hardware and for the aesthetic look of the door. Now, a Euro style is where you basically cut sheets of either plywood or melamine or whatever you want, and you make a box. You have, you know, two sides, a bottom and a top, and you have a back. And basically, it's like taking a cardboard box, lifting it off the floor, and putting what was on the bottom on the floor up against the wall, and that's your cabinet. So a Euro style, when I was saying the materials got better,
Yeah.
It meant that the materials that we were using would, number one, stay flat. They would stay consistent in thickness. They'd be able to hold a screw. Because some of these materials, you know, you try to screw into it and it wouldn't hold the screw, or it'd split or whatever. You would never make an entire cabinet, like a kitchen cabinet, out of 100% solid wood. Number one, you'd never do that because wood expands and contracts with heat and humidity, and that would throw everything off. When you have moving parts on a thing that shifts and moves with temperature and humidity, all of your gaps that you want to be nice and, you know, perfect all the way down, those become wonky. The alignment of your doors look weird. So that's why we use stabilized materials like sheet goods, 3/4 inch material, you know, melamine, a particle core. That's also something that a lot of people like to crap on, particle core. And I would agree if we're talking about the particle core that we see a lot of, which is really junky store bought cabinets. That's really low quality material. They use low quality resins. They use low quality wood fiber, wood chips, that type of stuff. And it's made very poorly. It's not very dense. It's not very resilient. It usually has like a vinyl cover that goes on top of it that looks like white or wood grain or whatever. But the stuff that we use, that I build a lot of my cabinet boxes out of, it's very resilient. It's more flat than plywood. It's more consistent thickness than plywood. So everything's going to be more accurate. It holds a screw really well. Glue adheres to it really well. We have design glues that are meant to attach to the porous side of particle core to the melamine side. A melamine is basically a plastic that's been thermally fused onto the particle core. So the advancement in materials has come to the point where, and is still going, where we can get, you can meet a good price point, good durability, and the structure of the cabinet is solid from the get-go.
Thank you. I couldn't have even made that up or guessed. Okay, that's sweet.
Well, I did.
That way better than I did. So is that typically what you make your cabinets out of, John? Is particle board or particle core?
I offer a range because I understand there's a stigma to particle core.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot. It's well known because it had such a bad rap for a long time. It's basically like Toyota. They sold those cars for cheap back in the 70s, and nobody wanted to touch them. Nobody wanted Toyota, nobody wanted a Honda. But now it's gotten to the point where people are like, no, the Toyotas, they last forever. That's kind of the comparison. So what I like to do is I start from the budget back. I say, okay, what do you want to do? I want to do a whole new kitchen. Perfect. What's your budget? That's sometimes a touchy subject because they don't want to be taken advantage of. But what I see right away when I say, what's your budget? I'm doing two things. Number one, I'm going, how much money can they actually afford for this? And what do we have to work with? Because we start from there. And then I also see, are they going to trust me? Because they have to be able to trust me if I can trust them. Because the first person to outlay, effort is me. I'm taking my time, I'm taking my expertise, and I'm giving it to them. And they're going to give. So basically what I'm going to be doing, I say, well, what's the budget? And they say, well, it's X amount of dollars. Immediately I know, okay, that amount they'll be able to do whatever the heck they want with. They can go with, super nice plywood interiors. They look really good. They're light. Honestly, I prefer working with plywood because it's light. But on the other side is that it's usually not very consistent unless you get a plywood it's called a two-step plywood, where they they take all the layers and they glue them together. And then after those have been glued together, then they sand them and make them perfectly consistent, fill any inconsistent holes, and then they put the veneer on top. The veneer is like a really thin piece of wood that they put on the face and then the back. And a two-step plywood is much more consistent, will stay flatter. It's more accurate. You don't have dips and dives in the material. But a particle core it's almost perfect all the time. Accuracy is perfect. You just have to get the better grade of plywood or a particle core, which you usually get from a materials distributor, say like hardwoods, or I go through Intermountain Lumber for all my stuff. But it's meant for high-end production. But basically, once they tell me their price, sorry, I'll digress back to that. But when they tell me their price, I can work back from there. So I say, okay, what they had here, they still want to achieve this. They still want to achieve this picture. But what I'm doing now is going, okay, how can we achieve this with quality, with accuracy, with attention to detail, but we can shift some things around. So we can probably free up $1,500 to $2,000 by switching from plywood to particle core. Particle core is not a inferior product. Some people think it is. It's not. But we can put that in. Usually they don't care. And then so that's all the interior. All the exterior stuff is going to be the colored. It's going to be the wood. It's going to be, whatever they want to be on the outside that matches the color of the doors. We can go from a solid wood dovetail drawer to a plywood butt joint drawer. Still great quality. The thing I don't sacrifice is hardware. I'll always use the highest grade hardware. I always use the highest quality manufacturing. I'm not going to skimp on anything. The things that wear the most, I'm going to make sure that I beef up the most, so that we always have a solid product. We just shift the materials around to meet that end goal. And that's when I can. So basically, when you're looking at the quality of materials, you could be strategic. They're all tools, and I'm not going to say, oh, I'll never use a box end wrench because it's just an inferior tool compared to an impact. It's just like, well, sometimes you can't fit an impact, so you got to use the box end wrench.
For example, when you're trying to do toggle bolts and put a counter together, you cannot use an impact on that, right?
Hey, tell us about that. Do you have
no stories?
Do you have any experience in that?
Tugga, 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 tugga. Break.
And there goes everything.
That's interesting too, because I've always wondered, and I'm curious about
This isn't about me.
This isn't about me. About the particle board and plywood, because at the shop I did my apprenticeship at, it was all particle board, melamine.
Yep.
And at the time, that's all I knew. And then once I moved out to Southern Alberta here and got in touch with some different people, the whole plywood and face frame, and then you start, people with their opinions, and oh well, face frame and plywood's way stronger. I must say the weight of plywood cabinets compared to melamine, when you're doing a big 8-foot pantry and melamine, that gets to be, and if you're working by yourself, now we have these different weights and different things. So it's interesting to see and hear people's opinions and that kind of thing with regards to quality. And, because there's a lot of factors in what material you're going to take. And obviously it starts at the budget, like you said, but there, everybody's got their opinion on melamine and plywood, and they will die with that. Some people might be open.
Maybe not everybody.
When you're a shop and you're, like you said, you're dealing with the budget, you have to be able to offer different products for your customers, because if you're just going to say, a pre-finished plywood that costs $130 a sheet versus melamine that might be $50, that's going to influence the price.
40.
So it's going to influence the total price of a kitchen. So
50 up in Canada.
Maybe 65.
The exchange.
It's I think a lot of that comes from ignorance. I see that a lot, where people go, well, I found this and this has been good, so I'm going to hold on to this. I'm not going to jump around. Honestly, because taking chances with products can be a very expensive mistake. if you screw up, like I know guys who have sprayed certain types of finish on doors and all the finished parts of a kitchen. They install the kitchen. So you have all the effort of getting the door to the spray booth and then in the spray booth and then to the customer and then installed, cut, fit, boom, done. And then the finish starts to peel. Why is it peeling? Within a year, this is no good. And then all of a sudden, so people are like, you know what? I'm not even going to jump down that potential nightmare. I'm going to stick with what I know. This is great. It's the best. This is what I'm doing. Done. So, and I understand that. I see a lot of people that do that. It's the same way with tooling. Like we can always talk about different brands of tools or whatever. The main thing is like, let's not make a judgment call based upon ignorance. Let's make a judgment call based upon experience, based upon the use of the product, based upon other people's use of the product, and then go from there. But a lot of people, especially jumping in, you want to land on something, you know? You want to be like, this is the best, and that's why I chose it. You're like, well, this is the most expensive, and that's why I chose it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the most expensive is usually, especially today with really good marketing, the most expensive is usually not the best. And you just have to cut through the BS. And that's what I try to do with my customers, saying, my goal is to give you the best value. The best value for you is a product that's going to last, that you're not going to throw in the landfill in 20 years. And that's the main thing. It's like the last thing I want is somebody to throw my product away, because I want them to not have to ever. And so we go with sensible design, the sensible selection of materials, you know, all the way through, so that we can get the most value out of my time, their money, and the material. So, yeah.
So when you experiment with different materials, because it's probably and I've probably fallen out a lot of this stuff, but say over the last 10 or 15 years, the advancements, like you're saying, in materials, new products, there's solid core melamine products now. How do you go about, if you see a new product hit the market or in the industry, and you want to give it a shot, how do you go about analyzing that and thinking about incorporating into your projects?
Well, the main thing is a lot easier now with social media. I can take a screenshot of something and say, what do you guys think? Anybody experience this? There's usually at least a couple people that have, especially bigger shops. Those bigger shops are going to take chances on materials like that, because usually they're spec'd by designers, by architects. Those designers and architects like new things. They like them, and they want to put them in their designs because it'll help them, you know, be more on the cutting edge, and everybody likes that, you know. And so those guys are going to be using it more. We saw a lot of new material come through that commercial shop, which was a lot of fun, you know, stuff that I probably never would have used ever before, and we're using it there. So, but then you also see how easy it is to work, how hard it is on your tooling, how well it works in a, you know, an actual working environment, you know, in an office building or in somebody's house, or, you know, however that works. So, you see the longevity, especially working there for the time that I did. There are guys that worked a lot longer there than I did, but 8 years gives you enough time to go, okay, I'm seeing stuff that's coming back that was installed 10 years before I was here. And then sometimes a couple years where I go back to a call and go by, and they say, hey, this laminate was starting to peel because of this new low VOC spray glue that we were using. The low VOC spray, it's getting a lot better, especially the waterborne finishes and waterborne products getting a lot better. But for a while there, it was like, if you're going to use this, you're being paid by the architect or the designer to do it. And you're able to say, hey, I can't warranty this for as long as I can this product, because we've seen it fail. So that's what I like to do. I like to bounce that off against other people, say, hey, what do you think? And everybody wants to help everybody else. Nobody wants to go into a job and be like, oh, I just wasted my time, effort, and money, and the client's money, am I now going to go from a $10,000 project to a $15,000 to $17,000 project because I screwed up? Got to be careful of that. So
Yeah.
Holy smokes, that's a lot to think about.
well, kitchens. If you okay, let's break it down.
Explain it
looking
to
at
me like I'm
kitchens.
5.
No, that's okay. You don't have to be 5.
You should be 12.
My favorite Michael Scott quote. Just
Yeah.
explain me like I'm 5. You just
So basically, a kitchen has wood.
yes.
It has sheet goods.
Yeah.
It has hardware. Different types of hardware. So you have hinges, sometimes of different opening angles, sometimes of different, I don't know, different types. You have the flip up hardware. There's so many different variables. You have the countertops. You have backsplash, whether it's tile or whatever else. And then you have plumbing you have to work around. Sometimes you have to work around electrical. You're taking all these variables and you're combining them. So say if I build my boxes, I get all my boxes built to the right size based upon the drawings that in the measurements I have taken from the job site. And then I now have to apply the hardware, have to have the right size hardware that goes in all those boxes. If I screw, and then I have to go make the drawers. I don't know how many times I've made a drawer too big or too small or too shallow or too deep because of like I miss something. I go from, 27 and 11/16, but it has to be 27 and 3/16 or 1/16, and I screw that up. And the crazy thing about all of it is that you have to take it from cutting to prep to finish to assembly. And if you scratch one door, that's equal to like 3 hours worth of work. You start back at the beginning.
Especially with a one-person shop like yourself, you don't have necessarily 4 or 5 people that are working. That okay, you guys need to go. You 2 people need to go and refinish these doors, or sand them out, restain them.
Yeah.
One person, literally, where a shop you could probably get away with maybe half an hour, 45 minutes to prep it, stain it, but when you're a person, that's a detriment into your.
And I can't blame anyone.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's their fault. No, it's my fault.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different variables that goes into a kitchen. And a lot of that, and you also have to take into account, where is this door swinging? Where is this drawer pulling out? Are we going to run into all the appliances? Oh, they switched their microwave hood if they're using something like that, or their size of their dishwasher or their refrigerator. All of a sudden I have like 10 banks of drawers on the side of this refrigerator. They changed the size of the fridge. All those banks of drawers were all specifically sized so they're symmetrical.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I have to change all of them. Not only the boxes, not only the drawers, but also the drawer fronts. So that we're looking at, we're looking at 40 different components that have to be adjusted because of one thing. So there's a lot of things you have to take into account, and you can screw up royally. So experiences, mainly talking to people in the industry. That's what a lot of people ask me. They'll want to come out of like an office job or something. They're like, I'm tired of this. I just want to go and work with my hands. I want to start my cabinet company. I was like, go work for somebody for like at least a year. Do 3 years. Say I'm going to invest 3 years. That 3 years is going to save you thousands of dollars, because you're going to go in and make your first kitchen and you're going to screw it up. Your company, you're going to screw something up. You're going to pull your hair out, and your customer's not going to be happy. You're going to lose money. You'll eat your profit time and time again. Just take some time, go to a shop. People are looking for motivated folks everywhere. And who knows, you might love working at the shop, and your gung-ho attitude might actually get you to the point where the older owner of the shop goes, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. Would you be interested in buying the company? And then you're all of a sudden have a turnkey company that you've been working at for 3 years, and all of a sudden hey, this is pretty good. But a lot of people want to do their own thing. I mean, I'm doing my own thing, I guess. But that's the main thing I say. Go and learn on somebody else's dime. Be taught by people who know, because there are known things in the industry. You know, it's not crafting. It's not your own eye that's going to differentiate you from everybody else. It's you being able to take all the components and um and apply those in a thoughtful way, because you're going to go, oh, look at this amazing thing that I just did and I designed it for my customer. And then you get all the comments in from other people going, did you ever think about where that drawer is going to open? Do you ever think that maybe you need a filler against that wall, because as soon as you open the drawer, that wall is going to scrape against the drawer front? You know, there's all this type of stuff. So learning those best practices is a big deal, and going to a shop is going to save people a lot of time. That's what I tell people. At least they don't like that answer. They want to go and buy themselves a whole bunch of equipment and start in their garage.
I think it also
Which I understand.
It also depends on the shop that you go to, because there's a lot of shops when you get into commercial work where you might be assembling boxes
Yeah.
every day. You might be
Yep.
building doors. Luckily, the shop I was at, we did everything kind of similar to you. Everything mostly residential, a little bit of commercial, but cutting out boxes, assembling, building our own drawers, our own doors, our own countertops.
Yeah.
But there's some shops that just do doors. So now all of a sudden, you go in there, you're 3 years and you're assembling or building boxes for 3 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What about the install side too? That's another whole new world.
Oh,
right? You
dude.
almost need to have a good, and whether if you're not getting the experience at a particular shop that you're looking for, you might need to maybe go around and work for a couple companies so you can get a full rounded aspect of what cabinet making is, because there is a lot to it. And if I hear this all the time, people I want my own cabinet shop. Well, first of all, the overhead, the amount of tools and
Oh my god.
machines you need, right? Like you're just speaking,
He's just shaking
speaking
his
to the choir
He's
here.
like, oh,
There's a lot to it, and I think people
Oh.
underestimate that. And like you said, if you don't know what you're doing, say a $50,000 kitchen, you have to go in and redo 60% of it because you didn't put fillers, you messed stuff up, you used a new stain, a lacquer.
Oh.
Like, there's a ton of stuff that can go wrong that now you're in the red and you're filing for bankruptcy.
yeah.
Yeah, well, and that's the scary thing too, is that the overhead is insane. It really is. People think because of the cost of a kitchen, they're going, oh man, this kitchen cabinet makers must make a ton of money.
Yeah.
You
I
don't.
get it from IKEA for
Yeah. And you can. I mean, I tell you what, those are the best businessmen ever, to be able to go, hey, we're going to systemize all of our processes and we're going to export it. Awesome. I would love to be able to do that. And who knows? Do I want the management headache? No. But like looking back, it would have been probably a lot smarter for me to be an electrician.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
And the gung ho attitude that I have towards my craft, I'm pretty sure I would be able to apply to something else. Like I've loved to have been, I probably would have been gone super deep into the electrical side. Would I want to just sit and do residential stuff all the time? Probably not. I probably want to do something a lot more interesting. But the overhead of an electrician is like uber low. You got a truck, you got wire, you got hardware, whatever, I don't know, and a bag of tools. But here, I'm looking at, a $40,000 wide belt sander, a $20,000 sliding table saw, an $80,000 CNC, a $15,000 dust collector, and a $10,000 edge bender. And that's not even the expensive stuff. Like that's not the expensive stuff. That's the stuff for like a one-man shop. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that because I got all of that actually for a lot less. But if I was to go out and buy it new, it would be even more than that. So you're looking at all this stuff going, if you want to jump into it, great. That's awesome. But go work for somebody else first to make sure before you, mortgage your house or refinance your house and then find out you can't hack it and then you feel terrible or you just grit your teeth and push through. That's great too. But man alive. It's a hard trade to get into because of that overhead. And then we're not even talking about the hand tools that you need.
Yeah.
Like the regular drills and track saws and spray equipment and
and knowing how to
building.
use those tools and equipment, you know, like in the shop I was at.
It's impossible. Nobody could do it.
We had a surfacer, so we would, like, for all of our door style or all of our door components, we would
Yeah.
rip everything at 2 1/4, send it through an S4S machine. So I didn't use, we had a jointer, so obviously use the joint, but I didn't use a conventional planer at our shop because we had this surfacer that would
Mhm.
fit it out to the thickness and everything. So then, you know, now in the teaching context of having planers and all this stuff, some people assume, oh, well, you know how to go through and, you know, fix that planer. Actually, no, I don't, because I've never worked on one, and that's one machine. And,
Right.
you know, with all of the, like, an edge bander, if your glue pot's not working, do you have the skill sets to be able to diagnose? You know, kind of like automotive and everything. You
Yeah.
have to be a jack of all and be able to, and I think, like you said, that drive and that mindset and that
Mhm.
energy not only has to go into your product, but it also has to go into knowing how to operate your machines and maintaining them.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, because all these tools, um, since we're working with precision applications, we have to make sure that our tools are set up correctly. So if your table saw, like with my sliding table saw, say if it starts to slide out of alignment with the blade, that's a big deal.
Mhm.
And so I mean, it's something where you have to know how to adjust that. Well, now you're talking mechanics. And or say I got all these machines in here and they run on 3-phase power. Well, I only have single-phase power. How am I going to do that? Well, I guess I can pay an electrician, you know, $20,000 to hook up all my machines, but or I could figure out how to do it myself. Well, here we go. Now I'm an electrician, I guess. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but the main thing is, um, there's a lot to it, and I'm sure there's a lot to every trade. You're talking about you're in metalworking.
Yeah. Well,
Basically, you just need a welder and a mask and
yeah, that's it. Eh?
that's it.
That's it. That's all
fine.
there is to it.
That's all. The amount I've learned since I started teaching, and that sounds really bad, but it's just crazy because you come in. I mean, I'm not an expert in anything. I know some stuff about a lot of things,
Mhm.
and I'm becoming more and more okay with that. There's a lot of what do we talk about with Ray? When you're what is it? When you're not confident about your skills, but everyone else is. What do we call that? Come on, what was it? When you're like, oh no, it's not good, that's not good, or I'm not good, or and then your confidence goes in. Oh my gosh. I can't forget what I'm gonna say.
I don't know it either. Sorry.
Imposter syndrome. That's
Oh, imposter syndrome.
yeah. So
That's when you
imposter
feel like you're not supposed to be there. But what about people who think they're supposed to be there, but they shouldn't? What's that called?
oh, I don't know. I don't
That's
know.
called influencer syndrome, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh man.
Sorry, but no,
No,
I know
no.
what you're saying. You
So
learn more when you
I've
teach it,
I've learned
really.
so much because I have to, and
Mhm.
now I'm going through. We have that journeyman process up here in Canada, and so
Yeah.
I'm apprenticing to get my journeyman welder certificate. And but I have kids who have come in who've welded more. Like when I first started, I've had students who come in who've welded more than me, and that's okay. I'm like, here, I'm just here to let's figure it out, and they've learned some stuff and whatever. But there's so much, so many nuances. There's so many things to consider, and
Mhm.
you can't come in there in anywhere being like, I know this, I know everything. You can't teach me anything, right? Because I've learned even just from listening. We enter our students into the skills competitions, and just by listening to the coaches talk to the students in when they're practicing or whatever, just picking up tips that they're giving them. It's like, oh man, it's crazy.
Mhm.
Like you have to be okay with not knowing everything.
Yeah. Well, even guys who you look at and like say on commercial job sites, you get all sorts of people in there, good and bad. But the crazy thing is that you can learn something from every single one of them.
Hmm.
and that's not being pandering either. It's like, oh, everybody's a precious flower. We just have to look at the right direction. Like that, they're not saying that at all. But like somebody's good at something. Everybody's good at something. If like that one guy, that spray finisher, he was really good at, I guess, getting out of trouble. I guess that can be
He's
helpful.
great at partying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but or dealing with the fallout after the partying, because you still have to live, you still have to work. So there's something there. You know, there's something there you can learn from everybody. But yeah, there's when it comes to cabinet making, it's not as simple as people like to, you know, building some floating shelves for your wife and then going, hey, I like this. I'm going to quit my, you know, 6-figure accounting job. Like, don't do that.
That's interesting.
Don't do that.
I'm learning so much even right now about cabinet making and how there's different ways you can do it and different materials you can use. And so thank you for sharing that, because from like let's say a consumer perspective, a customer perspective, because when you said, well, you have what did you say? You're like, no, most people have an opinion on either face frame or Euro, and then there's the particle board. What was the good stuff that people think that is crap? What was it called again?
Particle board?
Well, there's like,
Melamine?
yeah, melamine, but then there's that like rigid one. I don't know.
Oh, the 2-layer plywood.
Yeah, that one.
Oh, the two-step. Yeah, it's
the
called
two-step.
two-step plywood.
I'm trying to learn.
It's two-step because you do one thing in one step, and then you do the second thing in the second step.
But then you said, like, chances are you have an opinion on this, and I was like, probably not most people. Then I was thinking about that as you were talking. It's like, well, maybe people should have an opinion on this so they know what they're getting themselves into, right? When you talked about how you went to, you know, your customer has to trust you so that they know that they're not going to be taken advantage of. But it would probably help if the customer kind of knew what you were talking about too, instead of being like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. And then they don't get a product that they want, or they didn't realize that what you suggested to put in there wasn't actually meeting their needs or meeting what they wanted. Like like you said, there's got to be some maybe some due diligence or some responsibility on the consumer's part to like look into some of this stuff, so that but not dive in or not like overshadow the expertise of the craftsman either, because you get those people too, like working in a mechanic shop. It's like, there's the hourly rate is this much. The hourly rate, if you're watching me and giving me advice, is double. You know what I mean? So it's like those people, oh, I saw this on YouTube, it's way better. But I mean, I'm not talking about that group, but it'd probably be beneficial probably for you, for a consumer or customer, to know what the heck you're actually talking about.
Well, yeah. Educating the customer is really important, especially if they're trying to stretch their dollar, which in my area, there's some people that do that. And I want to be able to provide, you know, a quality product. Like, say, there's a place, there's a very popular method for getting cabinetry. You go to a design house. They don't make the cabinets. They design it. A bunch of ladies in wide brim hats and big big glasses and cardigans that are not buttoned up. Everything's taupe. except for their Stanley mug. Their Stanley mug is like pink or turquoise. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they you know, but they all, and I don't mean to crap on that. I'm just jumping off of a trend, or what do you call that? Anyway, there are people that go there and they design their cabinets for them. They can design a beautiful kitchen. It looks great. The problem is they all get them from the same factories. It's like, oh, well, that's not true. Well, a factory we get it from is in Kansas. Like, that's true, but it's owned by this main company that owns all of those places. And they're all put together with 1/2-inch crap particle board with hot glue. Believe it or not, it is hot glue. They tack it a few staples here or there. And they give you the look. You want the look. You're like, this is awesome. And you get in your house and you start living with it, and you're like, what the heck is going on? Why did my drawer front fall off? Why are all my doors and drawer fronts not lining up anymore? You know, stuff is just not looking good long term. I equate it to getting married to one of those ladies that puts a ton of makeup on, and then you never see her without makeup, and then you wake up after your wedding and you go, "What the heck? Who are you, Janice? Where'd you go?" She's like, "I am Janice."
Got a voice changer too for some reason.
Yeah, yeah. You know, she's using AI the whole time.
Yeah.
But like, but the whole thing is like that's essentially what it is. So I want to be able to tell them, you know, from the wall front what you're getting, you know, because they're even in the names of the products that some of these places are using, it's the same name. I was showing a drawer slide a while ago. It's a Bloom Tandem drawer slide. Bloom is the name of the company. Tandem is the type of slide, and then you know, your drawer slide. I had 2 different products in my hand. One was like a 50 kilogram weight. Well, it was rated for 50 kilograms. The other one was rated for like 20, and it's really cheaply made. It's flimsy. It's budget on purpose, and it's made for those big cabinet manufacturers. But it has the soft close. It has all those features that they talk about, but they're junk features. It's like, oh, it's got tires. Well, those tires are made of tissue paper. Yeah, but it's got tires and they roll. It's like, but I want tires that'll last, you know? So that, but that's the thing. There's that marketing hype. And what I'm trying to tell people is like, yeah, they'll sell you this. I'm selling you this. Usually I am 30% more money than those other places, but they are getting like 5 times the value for each dollar because the product is going to last longer and look, not just last, because anything can last. We can deal with anything. We all know about the first apartment we ever went into, and everything was just junk and grungy and grimy, and we don't want it. So something can last, but it'll look good. It'll age well long term. And that's what I'm trying to do. Saying, hey, yeah, you can put this in there. You can get the look. You can get the lady with the makeup and the fake teeth. That's fine. But but I want you to have the beautiful lady that's going to age well, you know, not the plastic surgery, that's the Botox that's going to get hard in 50 years. And then you have to live with this, you know, Easter Island looking thing in your old age. So we want something that'll with, you know, it starts with the design, starts with picking the right materials so that you live with something that ages really well, that, you know, 20, 30 years from now, you don't want to change it. That's what my dad did because when I came here, when I first moved back, and bought the place from my mom was ready to sell it. So we bought the place. The shop is on the property. And the first few jobs that I ever got were making new countertops for people who had bought cabinets from my dad 30, 40 years ago.
Wow.
And they're replacing the countertops, and the kitchens still look good. They're made of great materials. The layout is really thought out. And so they're able to basically go, yeah, I like the layout of my kitchen. It's easy to go from the refrigerator to the sink, to the stove, to the garbage, to the dishwasher. Everything is right where I want it to be. And they just want new counters. The counter is the spot to get most of the wear. So I did that for 2 different kitchens, both over 30 years old, and both of them love it still, and they look good. But I guarantee you, they wouldn't have thought that way if they got it from Home Depot or Lowe's. They would have looked at it and gone, well, we need new counters, but doggone, these cabinets are in such rough shape. Should we replace the cabinets too? So you're going from maybe a $7,000 to $10,000, you know, investment to another $70,000 investment on, and some of these kitchens would have been that, if not more. So you're just looking at it and going, man, how about you just spend the 70 grand once and it lasts you your entire life rather than, and who wants to go through a kitchen remodel again? Good land. Not me, man. I tell you, living without a kitchen sink is no fun at all. So,
well, and you take, for example, even say drawer slides, like you were mentioning, you were talking about the blue tandems. you know, there's so many different varieties of drawer slides. There's a meta box, which would be metal sides
Mm-hmm.
on a roller system, and you do a piece of melamine or a bottom. Then you've got the bottom mount slides. Next would be what, full extension, and then they came up with a soft close full extension. And again, there's a whole bunch of different manufacturers who make good quality
Yeah.
full extension. And now we get into these undermount where you've got the Bloom tandems, and you've also got a bunch of companies making these cheaper ones. And then you've got Movento, which even have more adjustments. Like I think the most frustrating part, and I have just done this since I've been teaching, is going from, we did most of our stuff really cheap, like I guess budget friendly cabinets would have been the bottom mount drawer
Mm-hmm.
slides, and then most of our stuff was full extension with the soft close. But to get into the Bloom and dealing with metric, and you talked about, you know, miscutting a drawer or something, to this day I've got a piece of, I think, 3/4 inch MDF in one of my shelves that has the instructions on how to for the clearances for the Bloom stuff, because I don't do it very much. That was the most frustrating part, because again, I know how to whip a box together, you know, but you've got to get the different jigs to drill the hole in the back. Like, it's just, and that's just one component. That's a drawer of a kitchen, let alone the hinges, crown mold. You know, there's so many pieces together. And yeah, I mean, when you talk about, you know, inferior products or cheaply made half-inch cabinets that these manufacturers are sending out, I think that's what gives a bad rap for, say, the custom or, you know, solo shops. When you, well, I can get a kitchen for $20,000 with everything, soft close this, soft close that, and your price
Yeah.
is 50, and they just don't know how that's different. Oh, well, this person's making 30,000 more. Well, it's not apples to apples,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's the hard sell too, because you don't want you're not throwing, garbage down their throat trying to get more money.
Mhm.
You're just saying this is a different product. It's, sure we can if you want to get that 20 grand kitchen, that's fine. That's okay. That's fine. Because I don't my point is I want to work for the people that will recognize that quality. And if I have to invest a little bit in that relationship to be like, okay, this is what we got to do. This is how we, this is how we get there. Then that's great. But and that's the one thing that actually is difficult is especially because social media is a place where a lot of that can be shared.
Mhm.
There's a lot of folks who don't understand it and aren't willing to accept the investment to understand what's going on. It's like somebody, I get all the time, oh, here's a particle core, that's garbage. Well, somebody like that probably isn't going to want to read a paragraph long comment saying, well, actually, blah, 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 blah. Or, and it's even more difficult when you start talking about safety stuff. People are like, well, you need to be, using this safety, you need to have a saw stop in there. It's like, well, let me tell you, there's a lot of things in my shop that don't have a saw stop, like my shaper, like a big old bandsaw is behind me, like other things. But the safety, uh, the safety information or the safety practices that I build on a table saw that's not a saw stop will transfer from the table saw to the shaper to the bandsaw, everything along the line. So and I'm not going to rely on uh that safety, aid
Mhm.
to do my work. I'm going to keep my brain sharp with how I do everything. And sure, maybe there'll be a time where I slip and my finger goes into the table saw. Maybe. But I'm going to be a lot safer if I'm not relying on just a safety feature, if I'm just using my brain throughout the entire thing. So,
And you're
yeah,
developing
it's just education all the way around.
yeah, you're still using a table saw, whether it's a saw stop or not, the same way you would as with a saw stop.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I try and tell my students that at school, because again, I think by law we have to have saw stops in schools, and I go through the whole spiel, show them how to use it, and I say, you're not going to be probably, because again, a saw stop might be $9,000 for, you know, 5 horsepower 3-phase. Who's going to spend 9 grand when you could go get a cabinet saw for, say, maybe 2, right? You're starting up, you don't want to spend a lot of
Mhm.
money. A lot of these kids too, if they're doing stuff on the weekend with their grandparents or family, they're not going to have saw stops. So you need to learn how to use it, how to listen to sounds. You know, that's the, like you're saying, that's the thing. And it transfers over to all the machines. You can't just rely on, oh, the saw stopped saving. Well, you're doing something wrong if you're running your hand across the blade. And there are some instances where you make a mistake or have something happen, but it all comes down to that tooling process that you have to repeat and stay sharp on all the time.
Yeah, and man, I tell you, as soon as I come up with a safety feature that's going to fit across the entire shop, I am also going to lobby the government to make sure that all of their people have to buy my safety product. You betcha I'm going to do that. Absolutely. Be like, oh, you need it, or else you're going to chop off little kids' fingers. Oh no, that's terrible. Oh, I hate that. That makes me so mad.
It has saved it has saved in my instance probably about 6 fingers. So with that being said, it is a nice feature, but you can't rely on that stuff.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. 6 life lessons not learned because of the saw stop.
Again, it's the education part, right? Just like
Yeah.
you have to educate your customers on materials.
Yeah.
You need to be educated on how to properly use these machines. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's a whole, it's a big topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, insurance and liability. There's a lot of that too. A lot of guys I know that run big shops with a lot of guys in it. They say, well, no, we should really have this in there. Have you seen the Altendorf hand guard?
Yes, I have.
So where there's this thing called the Altendorf hand guard. Altendorf is a manufacturer of sliding table saws, and there's this thing where they have this technology. They use AI technology, and they have a camera that sits above the saw, and it basically tracks all the movement that goes all the way around the saw blade, and it'll look for hands in your hand. Like if I wanted to, with this thing on, I could try to grab the saw blade, and I can't do it. I could not grab the saw blade if I wanted, because it sees my hand, and then it automatically sees that it's going. If it goes into the danger zone, it uses a ball screw spindle and a brake to push that saw down. The cool thing about it, though, is that it's not jarring that arbor every single time, which the saw stop is doing. And so what kind of damage are you doing to your bearings on the motor? It's like, is that blade going to track as true as it did before when it's hit super hard with a massive impact? I'm going to tell you right now, there's the type of tools that I see. If I took a hammer and hit it as hard as I could, it still wouldn't have the amount of force that a saw stop has when it runs into that brake and slams down into the bottom of the table. And that's going to cause accuracy issues over time. So it's like, oh yeah, well, it only costs this much for your saw for your cartridge, safety cartridge. It's like, sure, but are you going to want to have that electric motor rebuilt with new bearings and everything in it because of the run out on that saw blade? But the other thing that's really cool too is that handguard system can be applied to other tools. It can be applied to a bandsaw. It can be applied to a shaper. It can be applied to all this other stuff. Whereas the saw stop technology, you have to touch it before before it
that's
stops.
almost a proactive or reactive, whereas the handguard is proactive.
Yeah. So that's pretty neat. But I mean, I don't know how
anything goes into that danger zone, like a push stick, or does it know that it's a hand?
it knows that it's a hand.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a price tag on something like that, because I've got an old Altendorf in the school shop. I think it's an old F1, and it's phenomenal. And I've had a couple kickbacks in the cabinet shop on a panel saw. And again, that's not with hand, but I mean, you talk about a kickback on a table saw versus a 4x8 sheet coming back at you. We're talking, a whole different ball game. But all this stuff comes to a price. What would something like that even cost?
It says 40,000 pounds. Euros.
So we're talking probably $70,000 US, depending on what model you get. But they have it on different models, and they're applying it to different saws. So right now I know that they have it on the F45, which is like their really nice saw. I have an F92 in my shop. And I'm like the same thing you're saying. That's actually when I've talked to some of their guys at shows, they're like, yeah, that's our biggest problem, is that our stuff is so good that people don't see the need to get a new one. But the handguard, that is it's expensive for sure. It absolutely is. And it just depends, honestly, it's going to get to the point where it might be required, just like the saw stop is required in schools. Handguard's going to be required there too. It's going to be required in big shops that run a lot of dudes, or you get a massive insurance deductible on it, or a massive insurance break for having one. I don't know.
You think that stuff's tailored to the commercial side, like as a one person shop or these smaller shops, to justify spending that much more on a machine like this? Or would you rather have proper training in using something so you don't need to spend, say, another 25 grand on top of the machine to get a safety feature?
Yeah. I don't, for me personally, I see a commercial shop being able to do that more because they're just working more. There's more volume going through those bigger commercial shops. Because usually a customer for a commercial shop has more pieces that are going into their space than just a residential home. Maybe big residential shops for sure. I'm just thinking like a high production, high volume shop is going to see that as it's going to be more doable. Mm-hmm. But me, there's no way I'm going to go out and spend 70 grand on a saw for a safety feature. Yeah. I just can't do it. So, it's like, yeah, I'll lose a finger, I guess. Not that I will.
Like from a school perspective, becomes law, let's say, and then it's like, okay, well, where the budget has to be there to buy these things. That's interesting.
Yeah,
should come down in price, I think, as this stuff gets.
Yeah,
Well, this is the thing. So this is what happens. Let's just take saw stop. The saw stop guy goes to lobby his thing to the safety board, OH&S, and he walks up. He goes, "Hey guys, see all these guys chopping their hands off with saw blades? That's no good. That's no good. We need to put something on there so they can't chop off their hand." Yeah, it's like let's go grab a pie and talk about this. And he gives them their spiel, and he's like, "We need to do this. We're gonna do this thing. Costs like $5,000 if you're just buy it by itself. But I tell you what, if you pass this law, we'll make it so that you guys can get it for $3,000. They're still making a lot of money off of it, but what they're doing is they're clenching the market every single time you need a new one because some kid decided to throw an anvil at the saw. Oh, well, let's throw an anvil? Probably not. And then the anvil goes through the project car in the back of the shop, and the saw stop needs to be replaced. Well, all of a sudden you got another. So they're locking the market in when they do that. Mm-hmm. So I could see because I know Altendorf has done deals for educators because there are. I was talking with them at the show, and they said that they had, I think, 10 or 11 that were going to different schools around the country, around the United States. And really, honestly, you look at the thing, it's a no-brainer. I mean, there are different models, different people that sell similar blade stopping technology, but none of them that do it the way the Altendorf does. That basically, as soon as I press that button and that saw comes back up, that's the other thing. If it does trip when it sees my hand, all I have to do is step back, press the reset button, wait a little bit, press the start button, the saw blade comes back up, no damage to the machine, everything's ready to run again.
You don't have to go across the street to the other shop teacher and borrow
a cartridge.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody have to do that.
I may have had to do that a time or two.
So I mean, and the other thing that's good about if you have like damp wood, it's not going to trip the system as you would with a saw stop. Because it's conductivity.
Interesting.
Yeah, you throw a wet 2x4. Chances are it's probably gonna.
Wow, yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah. The Altendorf guys, they're all German. He's like, yeah, you can cut sausages all day on our saw.
I was gonna say before, either you throw a wet 2x4 through the saw stop, or tape a hot dog to it. Either way, the
Yeah.
cartridge is gonna go off.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's
So
good.
I mean, anyway, there's a lot of cool things coming in our industry, and a lot of it is with those bigger shops. They got all the cool stuff because they got the amount of money, the margins to do that. You don't got little shops like mine. We don't have the margins for that. But if I can, as soon as I make everything more efficient and everything starts, I just say, here are the drawings for the next thing. Let's get her going. That thing is probably being cut on the CNC that day. All the doors are being ready to be made, or they're being ordered that day. But with me, I'm going back and forth with the customer, and I'm setting that up, and then I have to get the material here, and there's a lot of things that I have to do on my own, and the process isn't streamlined. So I don't have the type of capital that some of these bigger shops have to be able to afford that type of stuff. But there are some insane places. There's a shop in Idaho that is only run, how many guys? It was an insanely low number of dudes. I want to say it was under 10 guys, and they're producing 300 cabinet boxes a day.
Oh,
Like it's going out the door finished 300 per day.
they probably have case clamps and stuff for all that.
Oh, they have, like, everything is automated. So basically everything they feed the CNC, or the CNC feeds itself, one or the other. It spits out the parts with labels on them. Those labels are like all automated, go into these little areas, and like everything is cut by the CNCs. 10-man shop. Basically what they are doing is just making sure everything is running the way it's supposed to. So those types of innovations are going to come our way. Just like shapers back in the turn of the century, everybody was using molding planes, but these big shops were using these big shapers with electric motors. Well, anybody can go buy a shaper nowadays, put it in their garage and run it. Yeah, you don't need molding planes. Well, that's going to be the same thing going down the line. I'm probably going to have a CNC that feeds itself and puts its own stickers on and spits it out into, carts organized by cabinet. And all I'll have to do is have somebody put it together, and maybe there'll be something that puts it together. Who knows? I don't know. But the cool thing is that it's all going down the line. You just need those big boys to be able to pay for it in order for them to niche down that technology so that they're able to, make it work later on down the line.
Do you think that
smaller
affects,
people,
like, craftsmanship? With all you're talking in all these industries, the amount of technology into tools and equipment and stuff. Does that take away from, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago, the true craftsman and being able to know how to construct a door with jigs on the shaper instead of being able to send it through a machine? Like, what's your opinion on that?
I would say it would be equal to kids being able to do math without a calculator. You can say our kids are stupid because they don't know how to do long division on paper. They just do it on a calculator on their phone. So I would say, will there be people that, if the apocalypse comes and all of a sudden I have to make a whole bunch of cabinet doors for somebody, will it be more difficult? Probably, but we'll find a way. But I think what's hurt the trades more than innovations has been the perception of the trades as less than. The professional look of the trades has suffered a lot. So, and I don't know where that may have come from, how that would have come about. I have no idea, but I would say that these innovations are really good. But you still need, the thing is that you can put somebody, any Tom, Dick, or Harry on a CNC, but the thing is if they don't understand what the end product needs to be, they're going to cut up a lot of material that's going to be wrong. So there's still a knowledge that needs to be there. And that's also why I was saying go to a shop, because that knowledge is there and there's nowhere else you're going to find it. Because those old dudes that really are doing awesome stuff, they ain't posting on Instagram. They're not going on TikTok. Well, maybe they are, but they're not posting anything. So you want those old, there's some some amazing folks out there that are posting some awesome stuff, and they're not getting any love because they don't know how to promote themselves, you know. But then, you know, some lady who has a rigid table saw and doesn't wear a lot of clothes can get 500,000 followers. So that's great.
It's the saw.
Go for it.
It's the saw.
What's that?
It's the saw. That
You know what? They're a good looking saw, you know. That orange, just get you the right way.
So that's a good segue. How did you get started in your social media stuff?
Honestly, it was just seeing some other dudes, because I wasn't even on social media. I was like, I have no time for this.
Yeah.
I posted one thing on Twitter once, and I got a ton of backlash from people in my city. They're like, what did I say? Like I made a bipolar joke, a joke about bipolar, and they're like, you have no idea what it's like to live with bipolar. I was like, I'm done with social media. That was like 2011, 2012. But then later on, I saw Instagram. I saw some guys posting on there, and I saw a friend of mine was doing a lot of posting on there. Mike Weeb, Beaver Creek Customs. He's over in Manitoba, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. He has a pretty decent following. I think it was like 1,200 followers at the time. It's like, oh, I think I'll try that. And I started posting, and that was 2016, I think. And then it was just showing what I was doing, and it was really cool, and just showing what I'm doing. And I would have a reputation for, like, I would get frustrated, and I would vent my frustrations on, like, I can't believe this tool isn't doing this. Like, I got a woodpecker's square, and it was out of square. I just spent $120 for a hunk of aluminum that's out of square. This makes me so mad. And people latch onto that because you don't hear anybody saying that. You hear people say, oh, it's the best square ever, so I can get my red wall behind my studio shot, you know, whatever. But it was just a no nonsense take on, this is how we do something. This is a really fast and easy way to do it, and this gives you the best results. And I think that no nonsense type of mentality, that no BS, resonated. Because I'm not a viral reposter or anything like that, and obviously I don't have anything in the way of looks to really bring people in. So it had to be with something other than those things. But yeah, my knowledge. They like me for my brain.
Yeah, my brain. I don't even have that.
We're all lost. We're all lost.
That's funny.
But yeah, so it was just
authentic,
that.
right? People latch on to authenticity and things that are real, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of fabrication out there. I don't think anybody needs any more of that.
And so how did you get into this podcast?
Your podcast?
Your podcast.
Oh, my Danger Mike podcast.
Danger Mike podcast.
It was just I don't know. There's some things you just can't share in a 90-second video on Instagram, and there are some people that just aren't gonna consume that. And I spent a lot of time listening to audiobooks for a long time, just tons of audiobooks over the years, and then podcasts when they started to become more popular. But there wasn't really much in the nitty-gritty podcast side. Not nitty-gritty, but like there's a lot of people in the maker space.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in the maker space, and that's great, but there's not a depth of knowledge there yet. Especially in the real world. It's like, because it's different. It's like I put it, and it's not supposed to be deprecating to anybody, but there's a difference. There's woodworking, and then there's wood playing, and there's a difference. If I'm wood playing, I don't care how long it takes. Are you all right there, fella?
That was awesome.
If I'm playing and doing this for fun in the evenings, that is great. That is awesome. Do that. But if you're only doing that yourself, there are going to be methods that you come up with that might not be very efficient. It takes longer, might waste more material. It might not be as safe. There might be better ways to do it. And then there are woodworkers who you have to be fast. You have to be efficient. You have to be accurate with all of that. Now, how do you combine all of those together? Well, it's like this. So it's hard to really share that. And there's not a lot of people sharing that. There's people that it's like, that's great. You're doing all this stuff. And now you're starting to work your way into my space. Well, guess what? You're not going to meet your margins if you're going to put everything together with pocket holes. It ain't going to fly. And it's also not going to look very good, and probably is not going to last very long. So there are better ways to do all this, and it's to help. Of course, my way has always been to like hit somebody over the head and say, listen, dummy. But nobody really likes that. So the longer form,
Hoff does
like
too.
the not there's to get rid of that whole clickbaity side and
Yeah.
really dig into the weeds and talk to people who may not have a lot of social media cred or a lot of exposure that way. Some of these guys, man, are just full of information that would just make everything better. But a lot of people don't see them because you kind of have to work your way through the weeds. And you talk to this guy, he's like, oh, have you heard of this dude? No, I haven't. And you start looking into them. You're like, oh, let's follow them. They have 230 followers or whatever, but they're sharing really awesome stuff. And those guys, I want to be like, hey, let's talk with these dudes and share information with real conversations, kind of like this one, where you're just free forming it, letting it go, and on it's like sitting down at a small cafe having coffee, and you're just sitting there going, hey, let's just shoot the breeze. We're just talking about normal stuff. Who doesn't like? It's like sitting with your grandpa and all his old friends,
Yeah.
and they're talking about their war stories or something. You know, you're like, this is stuff I want to listen to. It's kind of like that, where we talk about real stuff. I'm not in it for that whole. I get people say, hey, can I be on your podcast? It's like, no. It's like, yeah, you know,
casting call.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
well, no, it's not even really that. It's like there's, and it's not like I'm telling people no all the time. And it's not like I'm recording very often because, you know, I don't do that for a living. You guys don't do that for a living. You got to work it in like the next day, 16 hours after a direct message, you know, which is great. We can fit it where we can. But, you know, when you're talking with guys that work all the time, they're not content creating, they're producing product, and it's got to get done. And at the end of the day, they're tired, man. And the last thing they want to do is hop on a 2.5 hour call and record something. So you got to work that out. But that's essentially, I wanted to bring real information from people in the trenches and saying, hey, how's this going? And what are you doing different? And what is your background? Like, we got guys who are in prison. We got guys that had like 2 strikes in California for various things. They're like, I got to change my life around. Well, he started doing this type of stuff, or decided to take it seriously. And we got guys that are super old and decided, that's you, Jack Forsberg, if you're listening, have all this really interesting information, and they just love to talk and they love to share it and they love to let people know about stuff. It's like, oh, I didn't know I could run 3-phase machines in my shop that runs on 1-phase power. And we talk for like 40 minutes about phase conversion and all this other stuff. So, you know, it's about taking that real information, because what we're doing, we're working, and we got our headphones in because, you know, it blocks a lot of the noise from working, and then we can listen to an audiobook or somebody talk or whatever. And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of guys that are listening to it, you know, on their work day, on the way to work, you know, whatever. And I think that just helps somebody. Like, who doesn't want to listen to 2 guys talk about their trade? I think that's really cool. And sometimes I like to be free with the information. We're not editing anything. It's like, if he says something kind of, it's like, oh, maybe you shouldn't have said that about that designer. Oh, well, too bad, I guess. You better write down what you don't want to say, because everything else is coming out.
As we wrap up here, we typically end with our 3 questions here. What advice do you have for somebody who wants to pursue the cabinet making trade?
Do your research. There's some really good books out there. The Furniture Makers, the Encyclopedia of Furniture Making by Ernest Joyce. It's a great book. And you may think, well, I'm not making furniture. Well, there's a lot in there, a lot of practical information. It talks about wood movement. It talks about traditional joinery skills. Like the reason, it's like, say, for instance, why do we have the grain direction, being vertical up and down? Well, it's because it doesn't expand and contract that way. And so that is one way that, and so we can adjust it a little bit for width. That's fine. But the reason that we don't want it to be, you don't want it to expand and contract up and down is why we put everything vertical. And the structure of the tree is up and down. It's not side to side. So the structure of load coming down on the wood, it's more structurally sound with the grain running vertical than horizontal. So there's stuff like that that you learn in those books.
Mind blown.
Oh
hey?
my gosh.
Well, the thing is,
pop my brain up off the floor.
when you look at new designs, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna do this cool design, and I'm gonna cut it this way and put it in there. Like, okay, that's great, but there's a reason you don't do that. And this book is great. It's an old book. Geez, it must have been, I think it was published in the 50s or before. So it's still I think that Black & Decker jigsaw behind you is actually in that book.
You like that?
They call it a saber saw.
My father-in-law, he's like, hey, I got some old tools I upgraded. You want them? I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And it was the Black & Decker.
Yeah.
And then there was like a hand planer. And then
Oh yeah.
both orange, and they have my dad had the same set, and I was like, we got to put that on the backdrop. That's pretty cool. Hey?
Yeah, so it's like stuff like this. Some of the products that we use, some of the tools we use today are the methods that are not the same, but the reason behind why things are oriented the way they are is not cosmetic. Most of the time, it's practical. And so you learn that stuff, and when you learn that, you understand the why of what you're doing rather than the how. You can learn the how, you can deduct the how from the why.
Mm-hmm.
But know the why first. And so that's a really good one. Like I said, go and work at least for somebody for a little while. Just, there are lots of little shops out there. You might start working for a dud, then get out of there and go do something else. And go find somebody else. But there's usually plenty around where there's enough folks around that you can find information from. But search for that information. Everything you want to know is there. Just got to look for it. It's going to save you time and money if you do that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
You're not going to find it on YouTube. Just saying. Most of the crap on YouTube is not what you want.
You want stuff from the 50s because it's been
Oh.
tried, tested, and true for over 73 years.
Yeah.
Well, the main reason is this: nobody is going out and doing electrical, like wiring houses for fun. Nobody's going out and doing plumbing for fun. Tons of people are going out and doing woodworking for fun. It's a very low barrier to entry.
Yeah.
Mm.
So there's a low barrier to entry. So a lot of people are doing it, which means that the saturation of the knowledge base, especially with people wanting to share what they're doing because it's new and it's interesting, I want to share it. The saturation of that knowledge base just becomes to the point where you're like, well, where's the concentrated stuff? I'm hearing the same thing from everybody. Everybody's doing glue ups and using dominoes for glue ups. Oh, you don't need to use those? Actually, it's kind of dumb to use those. Oh, okay. Well, then I'll use but and it'll save you time. It'll save you money. It'll help you be more knowledgeable in your selection of products that you're going to use and how you're going to build it. So I would say, number one, go find a book like that. Find a book on design, traditional design, architectural design. There's a book that I have. It's called I forget it's old. It's like super duper old. Like it's a republishing from a book that was made in like the 13 or 1100s or something like that. It's called The 4 Books of Architecture. That one's really interesting. It tells you things like molding that's on your, like, crown molding and stuff. and baseboard and chair rail, and you see how it's all different. It's like, why is the crown molding different than the chair rail from the base molding? It's because of light. All of those curves and everything are designed to cast shadows specifically.
Oh,
So the crown molding up on the wall is designed different than a chair rail because of where the light is coming from. And so you see, because if you look at really well designed molding, you're like, what is different about this? Something's different. Number one is your proportions. Number two is how it's designed, where the curves are, where the the OGs and the flats and all that, all this other stuff. I can't speak all of it. That's something that I'm really digging into now. But understanding that, so you're not going to take a baseboard and using it as a chair rail or use it as door casing or window casing. There's a reason we don't use it there. It's not because some old fogey said so. It's because it's not designed to go there aesthetically, and it won't look good. So that's what I would say. Look those things up. Look up design books. Look up those things. A good one is Ernest Joyce, Encyclopedia of Furniture Making. The other one is the 4 Books of Architecture, and I forget the name of the guy. It's like he's like some Italian dude.
Andrea Palladio.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'll link to it in our show notes.
Thanks, Jamie.
we had another good textbook when we were going to. I went to BCIT in Vancouver, and our prof recommended we get a book before second year, Cabinet Making by John L. Ferrer, and I think it was 1980. I think there's 3 editions, but
yeah,
the first one. And again, this thing was just gold. You go through wood identification. It talks about shrinking and design and all that stuff, because we didn't touch much about this in the conversation today, but the design part and the like, you're having to not only meet with these clients, figure out their budget, what they want from products, but also how are you going to lay out and design your kitchen so that they work with the space, because every space is different, right? So to have these understandings, I think I might actually get that architecture. What was it? The four
books of architecture.
Yeah, just because that to me, as I get older now and I'm away from that, and even with furniture, the design part, why are stuff designed? We talk about the golden ratio for kitchens with the kitchen, fridge, and sink. I think there's supposed to be a certain distance.
The Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah. So there's that design side is a whole big area that I think if you can pick away and just have some understanding, like even the chair rail profiles. I had no idea that was for lights and different, it's there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
It'll differentiate even if you're starting off on your own and you're not going to go work for anybody, because a lot of guys now don't have that knowledge in those shops, or at least they might, but they're not really sharing it. Those things will put you way ahead of the competition, way ahead. If people go into one of your kitchens and go, why is this different? Why is it different than that guy's? That's going to get you really far. So I would strongly suggest design and how to build it, and then how to design it.
Yeah.
Start the basics.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what about some technical skill sets that are good to develop for somebody wanting to enter the cabinet making trade?
Understand where the force is coming from. Understand where the force is coming from on your tools. Where's the force coming from, and where's it going to? And where do you need to apply force in order to equalize it so that you can cut, so you can plane, so you can do whatever. Know where the force is coming from. Trust the force, Luke. Also understand where the force is coming from when everything is in place. Where's the weight going to be? How's it going to be fixed on the wall? Is it going to be freestanding? If it's going to be freestanding, how are you bracing, everything so it's not going to topple? And also making sure that you understand where the forces are, because gravity is going to pull everything down. So make sure that you have everything in place so that how you're building it it's not going to sag over time. It's not going to warp here, or, want to get all rocky over there. If you build it well with those things in mind, then it's going to it's really going to help everything. Understanding how to build, how to design, knowing where the force is coming from. That's a big deal. You'll be the safest when you understand where the force is coming from on a table saw, a shaper, all that jazz, a chisel. I cut my hand open, just slid it right across the thumb with a sharp chisel because I wasn't understanding, where the force was going to go. And I didn't think my hand was in the way, but it turned and right in. Oh man, that was the worst. So understanding where the force is going to go, where it's coming from and where it's going to go.
Should have had a chisel stop.
Yeah, I know.
Stupid.
Where it just starts to electrocute you and your body freezes.
I think big camera on your with your chisel. I got to put the camera rig on. Make sure it stops my hand.
Just blows your arm off.
No, yeah. All you need, it just, instead of those cartridges, it just comes with a spare pair of underwear.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on to the last question here. John, what's the top 3 starting out tools?
A hook rule.
Cabinet making.
A hook rule.
What's
you need a hook rule? A hook rule is
cabinet maker. You don't know what a hook rule is? I know what it. No, I don't know.
A hook rule. I don't even have one on me right now. Usually I have one in my pocket. Basically, it's like a 6-inch rule. It's like a ruler, and it has a hook on the end of it, so you can hook it on materials. Stare makes a great one. It's only like $30.
Yeah. Well, it's 60 up on here in Lee Valley in Canada.
Yeah, it's double the price.
Lee Valley.
Yeah.
But hook
beauty. Just kidding.
Amazon's probably going to be cheaper. Just saying.
Rule.
Yeah, Stare hook rule.
What do you use that for then?
Everything from setting up tooling, like setting up where I want the height of my saw blade to be, or making sure that things are, like, say when I have a tiger fence on my sliding table saw, making sure that it is still calibrated correctly. So tool calibration, material thicknesses, material widths for marking, doing like fine marking on there. Because believe it or not, we can't rely on our tape measures being consistent one to another. Have you ever taken a tape measure and pulled it out and like bent it in half at the 7-foot mark and looked at to see if all the ticks are in line with each other? Nope. I did that with a Fat Max tape measure, and I had some marks that are like 1/8 of an inch off.
Oh,
over like, yeah. So you look at it and be like, that is way off on this tape measure. And it's not the same. So it's not like it's just one area is a little bit off. It's like an entire run of maybe 1.5 feet is going to be off. So a good tape measure, honestly, usually the Japanese ones are good. Tajima tape measures. Reference tools are where you start. Always start with a good reference tool, a good hook rule or something to measure with, a really good square. I buy machinist squares from Stene. Those are really good. What I have actually is I have an expensive machinist square from Stene, like a big one. And then I buy cheap ones and I check them against my machinist square from Stene. Otherwise that just stays inside the case up on my up on my shelf. And then I just check my stuff every once in a while to make sure it's not going out. But something like that will help with machine setup. If you're not making sure that your machines are calibrated correctly, all your work is going to be off. Start with that. Don't trust your saw to come square out of the box. It will not. Ever. Never will it.
That's a sweet.
Never
that's
trust
a really good point.
Yeah.
I would have never. Well,
cabinet making dealing with precision, right? We're talking about, like a 16th is very noticeable.
Yeah.
On a or a scribe or something, right? We're like a 32nd, whereas maybe framing, carpentry, welding up your alley, you're able to fill stuff. With this stuff, with cabinet making, you really can't.
You gotta fill that. Yeah, fill that gap.
Right? Yeah. You could just lay some beads and fill a half-inch gap.
I mean, it all depends on the. But it's just.
I will say some metal railing that have been produced by bad welders. Oh my gosh, where I have to put a wood cap on. You guys have it tough because the way that the metal warps and bends based upon how much you're welding in some spots. Oh, dude,
Yeah,
that's super technical.
It is, and I'm diving into that now and learning that is how, even in the welding, the projects that I have to do for my certification, you have to, you tack one together and you leave a little bit of a gap. You tack two coupons, and then it kind of opens up because this space is contracting and this space is expanding, and then you gotta weld this. Yeah, you bring it back, and it's crazy.
Well, and that's why the reference tools are so important.
Yeah.
Like if your reference tools are extremely important because it'll tell you when you start to wander, and you will wander. Things will come already wandered. You got to bring them back. Come on, fella.
Absolutely.
So as long as you have everything, you have a good reference tools to know where you're at, and then you go from there. But I would say a good hook rule, that you'll pull that out more than you'll ever believe. Like, it's crazy. A good hook rule, a good square. Ooh, what's the next one? Starting out. You know what? Believe it or not, this is they're all reference tools. A good string line. You ever use a good dry line? There's one made by a company, Shinwa, a Shinwa dry line. I can tell you right now, I can determine without any other tools. All I need is a string line and a tape measure, and I can tell you how square a room is. That's all you need, because a string line is going to be perfectly straight no matter what, and you can determine a lot with a string line. So a Shinwa string line, they're right around $40 Canadian. The last time I bought one on Amazon. If you get the red one, it retracts on its own. The green one, you have to wind it. The red one retracts on its own. Yep. But that's perfect for install. That's perfect for layout. That's perfect for tons of different things. It's crazy, and it's a really fine string line. Oh, it's the best. You can see how flat something is. Oh, it's the best. Yeah, precision. Flat edge, like a precision flat edge, or I don't know what you call those. Dang it. You can be as precise as a tight line will be as precise as anything. Mm-hmm. So they're great tools.
So
everything else will flow.
All three reference tools for and that's good because you can go from in the shop setting up machines to checking for material squareness or measurement, and then you can also apply that to your installation side too.
Well, guys that are always talking about, I could never get a hold of my joints to fit tight together. Probably because the stuff you're using is set up like crap. There's probably nothing wrong with you. It's 100% this crap that comes. It's supposed to be precise, and it's not. I don't know how many times I've beat my head against a wall because I don't know why this isn't going together. And then you go, oh, it's because this isn't square. Or the blade, there's a wobble in the blade. It's called blade run out. And that will cut a wider swath in some places and not in the other. And then all of a sudden you're dealing with a wavy piece that you've cut just a little bit, and it's not going to fit perfectly together. When you get that perfect fit, oh man, it's like a nice drive on the golf course. It just keeps you going. It tricks you to keep going, to suffer more disappointment.
But I think that it goes to tell you, though, you need to learn your machines and figure out and know how to fix them, because how many times do you just go for a saw, pull it off get it out of the box, take it home, start cutting, and like you said, whether it's framing or a metal chop
like
saw,
the old Black and Decker,
the blades kicked out. You have to be able to. That's the one thing with the trades and tools, is not only do you need to know how to use them, you also need to know how to maintain them, because when stuff's not being cut at a 90 degree, you're cutting a 5-6 inch high crown mold for a kitchen and your bevel is 0.03 off. Right? These are all problems. And then you get onto the site and you don't know what's going on, and you go stir crazy and you go through $2,000 worth of molding because your stupid saw wasn't set up.
Yeah, I can feel it right now. I feel the frustration right now. My temples are pulsing. Yeah,
And
PTSD
that's
over
why you
here.
work for somebody else.
Oh man, yeah. It's crazy. Make sure everything is the way it needs to be, and your life is gonna be you're gonna love it so much more. Invest in those reference tools, and then after you know why it's out, you can fix it. It's not hard.
Yeah.
It's easy. That I would go to YouTube for. Actually, go to my YouTube page and figure out how to do that.
Speaking of, what a great segue.
Oh,
Where
nice.
can people find you? And is there anything specific you want to promote right now?
You can find me on Instagram, SteneWoodwork, STENE Woodwork, no S. And then it's the same on YouTube. I have a website that is kind of okay, SteneWoodwork.com. I need to do more with it, but I don't. I'm not really promoting much right now. It's not much on my side. I just transitioned to using a CNC in the shop, which has been awesome. I've had a lot of people asking me, "Oh, should I buy a sliding table saw?" It's like, actually, you should buy a CNC. That's the first thing you should buy, not a sliding table saw. Trust me. But yeah, not a lot to promote. Not a heck of a lot going on. I'm just a normal cabinet maker. Pretty boring.
Not at all.
He's putting out very useful videos
Yeah,
on
seriously.
how to use stuff, and your videos and your educational side on your social media.
Awesome.
As a cabinet maker myself too. Like, again, a lot of these people we have, if we could have had this, if I could have had some of this, a fraction of this information when I was, on those jobs installing, even track saws weren't a thing. All this stuff where it's part of me wants to get back into it, because there's some frustrating days of, you have to use your jigsaw to cut a little bit away from the line and then belt sand to your scribe line, and jigsaw would chip up a piece. Like, just, I don't know, the little things. Oh, it gets so frustrating. I had quite a few jobs that just were ingrained PTSD in my head, and having, these videos and people that are willing to share tips and tricks is just for people coming up. Hopefully they appreciate this, because there was a time when you had to either talk to somebody or call somebody up and try to explain, or like, just the sharing of information is amazing. You're doing a great job at it, so keep it up.
I appreciate that. I don't post. Everybody, I suppose, posts reviews. You want to get something to blow up, obviously, but I don't dilute the quality of the content for that. So I'm sure we've all seen those videos where somebody cuts a bolt in half and uses a washer and wire and makes something crazy that works not very good at all. And it's like, oh, this is cool to watch. I don't do anything like that. I try to make sure that what I'm sharing is going to help somebody, because I find it helps me. And honestly, the only time I share it is when I'm actually doing it. So you see me sharing about sanding. Guess what? I'm sanding a lot. If I'm sharing something
content, right? That's what they say. Everything is content.
Yeah, that's true. Unfortunately, some everythings should not be content.
That's why I laughed at so hard when you said woodworking and wood playing. That's where my head went to that whole thing. I was like, I would be a wood player.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, not
there's
even
nothing.
I'd be like, what's worse than wood playing?
Wood fiddling.
That's a different podcast.
That's not trade related.
That's a totally different show.
That content probably would go well on Instagram. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? The new hashtag for you to try out. On that note, I just want to say thank you so much for taking time today to come on the show and share your story, and share just all the knowledge that, I mean, I've learned a ton today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. It was really cool to talk with you guys, so I appreciate you having me on.
And all the links and all, like, the links to all the books that you mentioned and the products, I've been writing them down, and to your Instagram and your podcast, I'll have those in the show notes as well. So thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate your time. Thank you to everyone for listening. Check out the show notes for all the things that John mentioned in the podcast. Thanks, Hoff.
Thanks, Rosie.
And we'll catch everyone in the next one.